appreciate that, Joe, very much, at least as much as I can understand. Of course, I'm married to an English professor as well. And one thing I like to say for myself and for my brethren, because I've heard a lot of her frustrations as well. She'll say, okay, if you want me to edit it, you be ready for red to be on your paper. And then the number of times when she says, well, they asked me to do it and I did it, but no, they really think that it sounds better another way. And we know what we're thinking, we know what we mean.
Right.
But to the educated, many times it doesn't come through that way on the paper. And if we do want someone to help us, we need to let them help us. And I've been in that position, many others have. And when we ask, might say the professional, need to trust their expertise in those things. And appreciate what you said too, and she's told me that a lot, of you don't need that many words. She said too many times the speaker insults the intelligence of the listeners, of the audience. You said it once, okay, you reworded it twice. They get it. You don't have to keep saying the same thing over and over again in different ways.
Right.
But sometimes we do. But our brethren are smart, and they can understand it in a few words. We don't have to use many words to be heard.
And usually it's easier to understand with
Yes.
fewer words.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I've said enough of it.
Thank you, Brian, I appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments for Brother Joe? Brother Doug Edwards.
Thank you again, brother. That was very good. And I'd like you just to kind of comment on the education problems we have today in grammar. You know, you're a professional, you've been around it for a long time. And would you say that over the last 20, 30, 40 years that our students are doing worse in grammar than they did 20, 30, 40 years ago?
I really believe so, but I believe there are still good writers. I mean, among us, I'm amazed, especially among our younger preachers. I edit for Brett Higgins' newsletter, and I get articles, and we have so many bright young men across the Brotherhood who are such good writers. And I'm always pleased to get articles from them because it makes my job a lot easier. So there's still good ones coming through. I don't want to, be a negative Nelly completely, but the problem is, and I've thought this for years, when I went through school, I had to learn to conjugate a verb. The verb is the core of a language. I don't care what language you're talking about, the verb is a core of the language, and if you can get the verbs right, you can usually figure out the rest of it, or at least it makes the rest of it a lot easier. And so we conjugated. Even a generation after me, I believe they continued to conjugate verbs, and they talked about active voice and tense and so on. But gradually, and this is what you're suggesting, gradually they began to drop that because people got to the point they didn't like rules. It's kind of like in religion. More religions don't like rules than do. Well, that's true in English grammar also. So they began to drop the teaching of some of these rote kinds of activities. They were negative about them. There was bad publicity, and more English teachers didn't want to teach it. And so we've had the quality of our language diluted because of that. And also the teaching of literature, and I love reading, and I have see nothing wrong with literature, but English teachers want to teach literature. They weren't interested in having a semester of British literature in senior English and a semester of grammar again. They wanted to teach literature all year, and they now do. And anyway, maybe that's more answer than you wanted.
Well, I agree with you. I taught high school English for 7 years, I didn't have an English background when I got this job, but I did. And one of the things that amazed me in teaching high school English was the poor grammar of students. You know, but these are high school children, high school young people, and in a lot of cases, sometimes I think that children in grade school who've been hammered with grammar actually do a better job with grammar than these high school kids would do. Now, one thing I want to add, and I'll be quiet, and you mentioned having someone else read your work, and I think that's a tremendous thing, because what I found with me personally, I can write something and think it's pretty good, and I'll take the time to edit myself and read it and reread it, and then I'll let somebody else do it, and they see stuff that I never see. It's almost like I'm blind sometimes to certain things. When someone else helps you on that, they really do help you to see things that for some odd reason you can't see.
It's because of the stereotyping process, Doug. This is a psychological term that means we see things the way they are in our mind rather than what's really on paper. And that's what we do when we reread our work sometimes. We see what we think we put there rather than what's actually there. Thank you.
David Peak.
I appreciate your, that's better, louder than earlier today. I appreciate your message very much, brother, and I appreciate some of the context I got from our brief conversation this afternoon. I heard you loud and clear and I really appreciated it. Do you think sometimes we preachers get a little bit ruined trying to aspire to the Apostle Paul? You know, Romans 8, 38, 39, one of my favorite passages. I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nothing present, nothing to come, nor height, nor depth, right? It's like, well, yeah, I mean, you know, the Apostle Paul is one of the most effective communicators in the scriptures, so I mean, he uses a lot of words, so that gives me a license, right?
That was a rhetoric question as far as I'm concerned. I wouldn't make that judgment. We may. It could be. You could be well.
Sometimes, though.
Yeah, it could be.
Brother Alan Bailey.
Brother Carl Johnson said after you edited and continued for the faith commentary on the Gospel of Mark that he wrote, and he said, Joe Norton's an amazing man. He makes all of us look good by your editing. And he just said it as he could read over some of his earlier writings on the chapter in the book that he wrote, and then you've edited, he could clearly see the benefit of having a professional editor to edit his work. And I would just say, I appreciate, 36 years is a long time to work on a project, and we're not through yet, we're almost. But I commend you for your work for the brotherhood. You've edited so many great articles and books and tracts, and you name it, you've edited it. And I just commend you for that, and we love you for it, and we appreciate all that you've done to help the church make great progress on the written page.
Well, thank you, Alan. But what I always remember is we all have our strengths, and we use them each in our own quarter, and then we're all making a contribution in one area or another to the cause of Christ. And we all have strengths to contribute. And I appreciate all of you who have different strengths from mine.
Greg Gay.
Thank you, Joe. Artificial intelligence, AI.
Chris?
I believe it's Grammarly. Every time I write something, I get asked, do I want it to be checked, rewritten? What is that doing to writers? What do you see happening? Because I don't see people taking 90 hours of their time easily unless they're pursuing an advanced degree to learn these basic things. And when I was in I started in college when I was 50, and I had to take some courses, and they were hard. And I thought I knew far more than my professors insisted that I knew. And so how do we transition to the world when AI appears to be rewriting and eager to rewrite everything we put on a page? And what is that going to do to us?
Well, that's a great philosophical question, but I don't know a lot about AI. When I need an answer, I call Chris, and that's the way that works. But even before AI, Bill Gates came out with grammar check and punctuation check. He didn't know beans about grammar. I mean, it would correct my work, and I would get so upset because they were wrong. And I know the rules, so I knew them. So we have to be careful. I never depended on grammar check at all. I didn't need to, and I felt for those who did need to, and then their work was corrected incorrectly. But with AI, I don't know. There are aspects of it that I find scary, but Chris assures us that there are many good qualities to AI. But I think the best thing we can do is to learn ourselves. And then when Bill Gates corrects it or AI corrects it, we know better. And yes, there are a lot of details to English grammar and punctuation, but they're not unlearnable. You can learn them. And then you know what's correct, and you'll know when someone is marking your work incorrectly. I was editing the second book of sermons by Wayne, and I sent it to someone after I had edited it. Martha Morris was my right hand for 35 years. She died this year. But I would go through it. Martha would go through. She would see things that I missed, and then she would send it back, and I would reevaluate and all of this. But when I sent this chapter off, I had corrected the punctuation, and it came back with all of this marking that was totally incorrect. That was annoying, I must admit. But we need to learn. We need to learn the rules of grammar and punctuation because we're communicators, and there's nothing wrong with rules. We are purists. I realized that a long time ago. I'm a purist. I think that's why when I am editing, I want it to be right. I want the punctuation to be right. All of it. I want it to be the best it can be. I've been taught to be a purist by scriptures, and you have too. We say when the scripture gives a command, we're supposed to follow that command. That's being a purist. And we believe that. And that carries over into other parts of our lives, like writing and editing and grammar and so on. But I don't have a good answer for you. I said don't ramble, and I rambled.
David Griffin.
I wrote David back in September as I was getting into this topic because David is an expert in Greek. And I said, this is my topic, and I know you're an expert in language, and, can you make some suggestions that would be helpful to me, and we might make a tie here that you know about the Greek and I don't, and his email got lost, and we never were able to connect, and I sort of regretted that because David is an expert in language, and we all recognize that. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for your presentation, your compliments, and I'm sorry I missed your email.
It happens.
I'll see if I can find that thing. I have a question now, I don't know, it may not, and I don't really know what my question is exactly, it's sort of muddled. But years ago, I started reading the Restoration authors, Campbell, McGarvey, and all of these. And recently I've decided to revisit the Campbell debates. And like I've always been with the Restoration authors, these 19th century authors, just amaze me. Their writing, not all of them say, but a lot of them are just, it's a work of art. Every paragraph is crafted, layer upon layer, and they just build an argument so beautifully, I think. I don't know, in modern English classes, they'll tell you, oh, you gotta shorten your sentences, I think, and maybe that's just the difference between then and now, I don't know, but like I said, I don't really know what my question is, except that there is obviously something very different about the way they wrote and the way we write. And that may just be a change in language over 150, 200 years. But there seems to be a quality about it that is just, in my estimation, it's completely, maybe that's subjective, but I guess my question kind of relates to what Doug was talking about. Is it education? Is this the right question? How far have we fallen, or I'm not sure quite what to ask, but maybe if I just keep talking, maybe you'll kind of get my point.
You're doing fine, just keep going.
But I'm just amazed because Campbell and Owen, Owen's not even, Owen's a socialist, he's not a Christian, and yet both these men stood, well, Owen read his speech, but Campbell apparently speaks almost like it's text. And maybe that's a result of their editing after they put it into print, I don't know. But can you say anything about that or comment on the phenomenon I'm trying to describe?
Well, I can speculate. I don't have any firm research on it, but there's no doubt writing was different back then. The language has evolved, and so we have the difference in the way things are expressed. But remember, their education was so much more intense. They didn't have pep rallies and whatever else they do in school today that detracts from learning anything. So they didn't have those distractions, and they went long days at school, and they did a lot of things by rote, and it became something you don't do to do anything that requires rote. So we have these changes. I certainly don't have a good answer, but
Well,
those are speculations.
Well, I guess you're hitting on the same speculation I have. Something has declined, it seems, in communication, but anyway.
Also, we have to realize, David, we have a different audience from the audience they had. There were no televisions, there was no internet, there was no Facebook and phones and text and everything else, social media.
Like I said, something has declined.
So they were more focused in that regard. And I think the fact that we are where we are as a society, we can't deny it. We're using a different medium now, and we can't deny that. And all of this business that Chris and Noah are into about the social media and all of this, I don't disrespect it, but there are things about it I don't understand and don't necessarily like always, but it is where we are, and these are the people who do like this kind of thing are the people that we're going to be dealing with.
Right.
And so we have to recognize the fact that we're trying to save those people too. And so our methods may be different. We certainly never change the truth, but our methods will have to be upgraded if we're going to reach many people outside of the kind of circle of people we've always reached. I think that's a reality.
Thank you.
Matthew Barnes.
Thank you. I really appreciate your talk, and I think it kind of hurts, but you've helped me identify some areas I probably need to fix.
I have many more here.
Hoping on
not at all.
Although I will say, I think you pulled the wool off my eyes off a trick my wife may have played on me. She's also an English teacher and enjoys editing, and maybe I asked her the foolish question once when I was watching her edit one of my lessons, am I a bad writer? And her answer was, no, you write like you speak. So I don't know what she meant by that now. I don't fit there. I think over the years, one of the early criticisms I had, because I would reach out to get help when I was writing sermons early on, was I wrote way too succinct, way too terse. And so I had to learn to, express something a bit more fully. And I think over the years I fell into the opposite end of that trap. I got too bloviating. And for me, maybe I'm unusual, but if it helps someone else who feels this way, it was a feeling of expectation I had to hit a certain time, and I began to override. Is there advice you might have on that? And maybe that's something we shouldn't worry so much about. Maybe it's a quality over quantity issue.
Did you say time limit?
Or time expectation, sorry, not limit.
You mean your own time or the time for the reader to read it?
Like if I'm speaking,
Oh, okay.
that people would expect me to speak for a certain amount of time or fill a certain slot.
Well, the simple answer is it should always be quality over quantity, whether it means we need to speak a little longer or not speak long enough. We need to consider the audience and what impact we're having. Remember, this was pointed out, I think, this morning sometime. It's not about us. What we're doing is not about us. When you're preparing a sermon, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about how am I going to be able to reach these people and communicate with them. When I'm writing, what's it about? It's about somehow touching the heart of someone and influencing them to think about Jesus in a different way sometimes from the way they have before. And so then this time thing is sort of removed. Now I'm all for precise sermons and not long ones. Noah doesn't like me for that. But I am, because I think we need to be prepared, we need to say what we mean, we need to use our words carefully and communicate, but don't wear people out, because it isn't going to do any good. You know, if they're bored, their minds are not with you, their body may be sitting there, but their minds are not with you as far as the speaking part. There's no real rule. We have to use a lot of judgment, but we have to prepare ourselves with the basics of what's effective, and then use some judgments in how we apply that. Matthew.
Last question is to Chris Jones.
Oh no.
So, as someone who has violated every one of those rules that you said, Joe, as you well know, before I actually ask my question, I want to answer to the AI thing. You can trick AI into kind of sounding like your voice, but I guarantee if you send me a paper that was written by AI, I will spot it a mile away. I do not care how much you try to trick it, try to make it sound like you. AI has its own voice. But to my question, Joe, what is your advice to someone like myself who's said the word ain't in front of you to your face? I remember when I did that, I tried to pull it back, but I couldn't. What is something we can do on a weekly basis to improve our grammar, our writing, and our communication?
Well, the only way I know to do it is to find the rules and have some exercises that demand that you use those rules. I have some grammar challenges that I have used with a few. They're very incomplete, but they are a way to communicate what you're asking about, and especially I like these with you who are younger, because if you're interested, you can pick up some things. Like, you know, I talk to some of you and I'll say, well, you need a comma there, you have an introductory adverb clause, and, you know, what do you mean? What's a clause, much less what's an adverb? So, but it makes a difference because of the readability with that comma. And you've got to know the structure of the language before you can get into that realm of discussion. The only way I know is to dig in and do exercises.
Joe, do you have any final comments?
I have the closing of my speech.
Okay.
To writers, this is to write. When you, as a writer, place your work in the hands of someone else to analyze it and change it, you expect a level of expertise and a double dose of integrity as he or she revises what to you are priceless words of wisdom. You have a right to have that expectation. And if it doesn't happen, then that's a sad day. To editors and prospective editors, let me speak from a personal perspective. When someone places his writing in my hands to edit, I feel I've been entrusted with something this person holds special, and I feel a great sense of responsibility in carrying out their request. All of you who are editors now, and there are several here, I know, but all of you who are editors, or if you would like to be, or you are a prospective editor, you need to feel that same sense of responsibility. Otherwise, don't mess with other people's writing. You don't have a right to do that. So they have a right to expect us to know what we're doing and to do it well, so we can enhance what they've done and not detract from what they've done.